Hello, everyone. Today we're starting our week 2 session of our declutter group, and we are going to be working on 3 E's: energy, emotion, and efficiency. I feel like these 3 E's are really helpful for looking at clutter through a self-compassionate lens. Um, Energy and emotion both really impact how we address clutter and how we feel in our spaces. And then efficiency is just a really nice way to bypass some of the things that keep us from dealing with clutter. In our last group, we talked about people who tend towards clutter or accumulating clutter as being possibilitarians or maybe connectarians. So they're people who see the connections and the possibilities in objects. And sometimes that's awesome, but at other times it may get in the way, it may create lots of obstacles in letting go of stuff. And efficiency can be kind of the cure. So especially for our ADHDers, for them to kind of pull themselves out of the muck of thinking about all of the possibilities and all the connections and asking, how can I be more efficient about this task that I'm at hand? Kind of letting go of the if-thens or buts and saying, I have a goal. What would be the most efficient way for me to do this? So let's start with kind of thinking about energy. And as you're listening now to this audio file, it's actually an audio file and not a video file today. We're not doing words on the screen. I want you to be thinking about how clutter impacts your energy and how your energy might impact clutter. So just thinking about that for a moment. Maybe imagining how your energy might feel in your home if it wasn't cluttered, if it was clear, if it felt less cluttered and more clear. How would you feel if you got home and your house was clear and simple and less cluttered? Maybe you still have all your favorite things, but they're there in a way that isn't surrounded by unnecessary clutter or things that you really don't want in your house. Or maybe it's your workspace or your car. And then maybe thinking about the clutter that you do have in your house and how your energy has impacted maybe bringing it in. Were there times where you needed a dopamine rush and so you bought something or brought something home? Were there times where you were just too tired to throw something out or deal with something? So you put it in a doom box or in a corner? Do you have a chronic illness that gets in the way of your ability to predict what your energy is going to be like? This is a really good reason that you might have too much stuff, or you might have a hard time dealing with the stuff that you have. Or are you a caregiver or a caretaker for somebody? Is it their stuff? Sometimes if we have young children, it can be really hard. Or if we're taking care of elderly people or somebody with a disability or ourselves with a disability, these kind of how much energy or spoons we have can get in the way of dealing with clutter. I would say that in those cases when we don't have the energy, asking for help is a really good idea. And then remembering when we choose to bring things in, too, to say, okay, I've only got so many spoons. Is it worth it for me to take this thing even if it's free? Oh, sure, this thing is free. This object is free. But is it worth it to me to bring that into my house where I'm going to have to deal with it? Do I really want it that much? What would you like your energy to feel like in your space. So again, just taking a moment to imagine your home and thinking about maybe what emotions you'd like to feel. Would you like to feel freedom or clarity, happiness, joy? Would you like to feel lighter, warm, loving? And these are just my words. What would your words be? What emotions do you want people to feel when they come into your home? When the people you love are in your home, how do you want them to feel? Sometimes when we have clutter, other people feel overwhelmed by it, or it makes them tired. For a long time in many cultures, there have been practices like feng shui or energy work in homes where the cultural study of how energy is in a home is really important. People spend a lot of time studying, like how do we create spaces that give energy or give positive energy, and what causes negative energy. And kind of across the board in different cultures, there is a consensus that super cluttered homes cause ill health or cause sadness or depression or really negative energy. Now, I'm not talking about collections that you love or objects that you love or even people who are maximalists. It's more like having things that just take up space. So if you're interested in energy and homes, there's so much to learn about that. Lots of great books on changing the energy in your home by, adding mirrors or keeping the floor clean or the direction you put your bed in. So that might be a fun thing to do alongside with decluttering, is kind of reading up on, do I want to keep a live plant in this room because that adds life or energy, or do I want to make sure I make my bed every day because that would actually make me feel energetic and ready for the day? Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're somebody who you're like, I am never making my bed every day. That's not the life I want. And that would be okay too. We really want to do what works for you. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was that there are actually studies that show that living with less clutter impacts, if the less clutter we have, that it positively impacts stress levels, it improves focus, and that it increases energy. And that it's exhausting to have to mentally read all the things, or it can even be exhausting having to find things. Or how about when we have to think about guests coming over and our house is really cluttered and we have to do a mad dash to get everything clean before we have people over, and then by the time we have the people over, we're exhausted and they come in the door and it's like, I've been cleaning for 4 hours. And that might be part of your goal. Can I have guests over without feeling really stressed about it? Having guests over may also be a good motivator. In our 4th session, we're going to talk about motivation. And one way that we can kickstart motivation is by saying, okay, I'm going to have guests over. How do I want my home to be? What am I willing to let go of or take out of the home in order to make space for guests? Cleaning. The energy we need for cleaning gets a lot harder when our house is cluttered. Like, what could be an easy sweeping job can be, I've got to move all of this stuff before I sweep because there's so much clutter. I wanted to read a little bit from that the book Buried in Treasures, and I wanted to read about how sometimes clutter in the home can prevent you from doing ordinary activities. For each of those activities, it depends on what they are, but it can really cause depression. It can cause us to be exhausted. And if you have difficulty using parts of your house, that's a really good indication that it's worth really taking on this decluttering journey, because we want to feel safe. We want to be able to leave through all the doors. We want to be able to use the bathrooms and the toilets. So just thinking, as I ask you these, as I go through this list, it's not just thinking about like, are these permanently made to not be able to use them, but are there times where you can't use your bath because you've stored clothes in the bath, or you can't use your bed because you have boxes on the bed, or your child can't play in the playroom because it's just too full of storage, or you can't use your craft room because it's full of boxes, or you can't use your garage for anything because it's only storage. And I've had clients who have ended up using their storage space as an art room or a playroom, or park their cars in it, or a gym after they've decluttered, after they've realized, oh, there's stuff that I've been storing in here for 5 years. It's time to let it go. Okay, so thinking about how your clutter might affect your ability to do these things in these spaces. And we're kind of thinking, could I do it easily? Can I do it with a little difficulty? Can I do it with moderate difficulty? Can I do it with great difficulty? Or am I unable to do it? Prepare food. Use the refrigerator. Use the stove. Use the kitchen sink. Eat at a table. Move around inside the house. Exit the home quickly. Use the toilet. Use the bath or shower. Use the bathroom sink. Answer the door quickly. Sit in the sofa or chair. Sit on the patio. Use the backyard. Play in the backyard. Sit in a sofa or chair. I think I already said that. Sleep in the bed or rest in the bed. Do laundry and find important things. So those are kind of like activities, and then you can also just mentally go through your house. And sometimes we become blind to this, but blind isn't the right word. I'm trying not to use blind and non-blind situations, but we become unable to see the spaces that get covered and stuff. So you may just want to go through your mind, go through the spaces in your home and think about, okay, am I able to use all the closets? Can I easily walk up and down the stairs? Can I store the cleaning supplies in the cleaning supply area under the sink? Or could I get to the plumbing under the sink if I needed to? Just going through your house mentally. Are there spaces that have collected so much clutter that they're not able to be used for what you would most want them used for? Maybe it's not debilitating to where you can't get out your door, but maybe your kitchen table, you're never able to sit down as a family and eat a nice meal because there's just always so much stuff on it. Or maybe you can't easily have people over to your house for a random get-together because you feel like there's just too much stuff. I wanted to look at a few of the emotions that are most commonly have to do with clutter and that kind of get in the way of decluttering. I think the biggest one is overwhelm. There's this feeling of like, I can't do this because it's too much for me. I have to back out and kind of shut off. It's really common. In fact, I think most people who recognize that they have a clutter problem feel this emotion at some point in dealing with the clutter. Many people, it's just right at the beginning. That's, it's right there immediately. For some people, it's all the way through. And some people, it has to do with very specific tasks or after a certain amount of time. So I always encourage people to start smaller, 5 minutes in a very specific area, 10 minutes in a very specific area, and then allowing yourself to rest and decide whether you want to go back to that, to decluttering, and allowing yourself to know that if you do a little bit every day, or even a little bit a few times a week, that you will get to a place where change happens. And there's kind of this magical shift at some point with clutter where you start to see a real difference and it becomes easier. It's almost like a light switch goes off for most people, and that overwhelm becomes less. Like you've gone through enough of the questions that you can kind of pick up the pace a little bit. If you're feeling overwhelmed, start with a place where you will see change. So don't start with like, I'm going to do this whole room. Start with, okay, I'm often in my master bedroom, and if I clear the master bedroom, bathroom, sink off, and really declutter the stuff there that's old, or I don't need it, or doesn't bring me joy, I will immediately feel better because it won't take me that long. It's not that big of a space, but it's one that when I walk into that master bathroom, I will feel better. So finding a space that you will see change and get some reward for doing. And I always say to set sentimental items aside. If something's super sentimental, and just set it aside, because those are the things that we're most likely to think back and wish we hadn't gotten rid of. And we can get a lot done. We're gonna talk about efficiency later, but we can get a lot done if we kind of bypass dealing with the overwhelm of looking at sentimental items. Sometimes some people are like, everything's sentimental to me. And in that case, I think, getting help, or saying to yourself, okay, I've got to start doing a scale of 0 to 10 or something like that. And the other piece for overwhelm that's so obvious is get help. If you're really, truly overwhelmed by the situation and by your cluttering, just get help. Ask somebody if they can help you, or find a support group. There's free support groups. If you Google online, or if you look in some of the social media platforms, there's groups where people will help each other out online. The next emotion I wanted to talk about is guilt. This one, I feel like it's really helpful to think about it ahead of time. Like, ask yourself, how am I concretely going to deal with guilt as it comes out during this process? I've heard quite a few people say that what's helped them is to say to themselves, I'm choosing a better life for myself, or I'm choosing me, or I'm choosing this precious life I have. Something about making a choice to center ourselves going forward, or center the life that we want to have, or honor the life that we have. Something around there. And if that doesn't work for you, maybe thinking of something else, a different way, brainstorming a different way for you to handle when guilt comes up. So when I say guilt, I mean like things like, I paid too much for this for me to let it go. Then you might say to yourself, okay, I paid a lot for this at one point, but I'm choosing to prioritize my being able to have a nice home to live in, or to be able to live without clutter. Or this was a gift from somebody, or this used to belong to somebody else and I feel guilty about it. Getting rid of it. Another emotion that I like to talk about that's not a negative emotion is courage. I think that decluttering requires courage. It requires taking risks to let go of things, to say to yourself, like, who will I be if I let go of this? What possibility might there be for me if I could let go of all of these things I've been holding on to and move forward in life? It kind of takes believing in a better reality for ourselves. Or for the people we love, right? Other people who might inherit our stuff or might live in the house. One of the maybe it's emotional ways of getting rid of clutter that is popular or people talk about is Swedish death cleaning, which I know may create an emotional reaction, but the Swedish death cleaning method, which you can Google, is a way of thinking about decluttering and purging in many ways. But what would I want to leave to others? Like just going through everything in your home and saying, like, would anybody else want this? Do I really want to leave this for other people to deal with when I'm dead? And while it sounds really morbid, what people have found is that it allows them to really live in their spaces. So like they're getting rid of all of this stuff and creating a new space for themselves while they're still alive. Something to look into. So we've talked a little bit about energy. We've talked about emotions. I wanted to touch a little bit into efficiency before we end for today. What do I mean when I talk about efficiency here? When people have this kind of possibilitarian brain or connectarian brain, and they look at an object that's broken and old, and they say to themselves, oh, but I could eventually fix that. An efficient way of looking at it would say, okay, I'm not going to be able to efficiently fix this anytime soon. I'm going to end up storing it for a while. The most efficient thing for me to do would be to let it go. And then if I really need one, I can buy another one in the future because it wasn't that expensive. So while it may go against some of our beliefs around consumerism or valuing objects, the most efficient thing is to let it go. So kind of asking yourself, how could I handle this object efficiently? Do I really need to go through this whole bag of markers before I put them in the thing for the thrift store? Or can I just say to myself, I don't need all of these markers. I have enough markers already. And if I need more, I could buy more, or I could ask somebody I know to borrow them. One of the best ways to be efficient about objects and decluttering is to not bring things in. So to say to yourself when you're out shopping or somebody offers you something for free, the most efficient way to deal with it is to never bring it in, right? That's the most efficient way to deal with objects, rather than having to bring it into the house and then dealing with how you're going to get rid of it later. So this isn't very romantic, efficiency. Efficiency is not very, deep or whatever. It's like kind of shallow, but it can provide us with a way out, a way towards freedom. So we're talking about efficiency over nuance, efficiency over detail, maybe even efficiency over aesthetic. So maybe you say to yourself, I'm going to be able to declutter much more easily if I leave all of my shoes out for a little while so I can see what shoes I have. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, but it's the most efficient way for me to figure out getting rid of things. We're going to pick efficiency over perfection. So we've talked about, instead of saying, okay, I've got to be perfect about where all of this goes, saying I'm going to do my best, do a good enough job, and then I'm going to work on not bringing extra stuff in. We're going to pick efficiency over fixing broken things or finding the lost pair. And we're going to pick efficiency over thinking about sunken costs. So sunken costs are like, I paid $100 for these shoes 10 years ago, right? You just say, okay, I hear you, brain, that you feel like you invest a lot of money in this object, but it's more efficient if I just let it go rather than trying to take the time to sell something that is 10 years old and I probably will get a fraction of what I put into it. So sunken costs is kind of recognizing the idea that, like, while you may have paid a lot for something, it's probably not worth much anymore, and that, like, trying to sell it is going to cost you money, or trying to get that amount that you feel you put in is going to cost time and effort. And so we want to just clear out things, and then hopefully not bring things in. All right, well, I appreciate you all listening. This week we've talked about energy, emotion, and efficiency. So maybe as you are doing your decluttering, thinking about how is energy impacting how I declutter, or how I feel about this whole process? How is emotion? How can I deal with my emotions in a way that allows me to keep going with decluttering? And then lastly, just ask yourself, can I step into my most efficient self? Can I call in the part of me that is an efficient person? Maybe I'm not naturally an efficient person, but can I pretend to be while I'm doing this decluttering process? All right, thank you so much. Bye.